Right now what we're going to do is talk about what there is when you want to identify what there is in a picture or in a room or in any other condition. A really super duper useful word to know in Spanish is the word hay. Ooh, that's slanted. Hay can mean 4 different things. In a sentence, it means there is, and it can also mean there are. Thankfully, it's one of the few times in Spanish when we don't have to pay attention to whether something is singular or plural. But if we put a question mark before it, or at the end of it, and at the end of it, it'll automatically turn into is there or are there. So here we have 4 pens, and we want to say there are 4 pens. So we just write hay, and then you can guess what comes next. We'll have our number, which in this case would be 4. And then we need to have our noun, the object that we're counting, bolígrafos. We want to make sure we follow the rules of plural nouns when we're doing this. So here we can say hay, and let's say we're counting libros. We would say hay 1, 2, 3, 4 libros. And then if we want to go punto and count the pencils, we would count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hay 5 lápices. Okay, those 2 sentences say there are 4 books, there are 5 pencils. But let's take a look at what we want to write when we have something that's singular. Let's take the desk. Okay, so we're going to count the desk. Obviously, there's only 1. So we're going to start out with our hay, because remember, it can be both plural and singular. There is or there are. So there's hay. And we know that it's going to be pupitre. But this is where we have to remember that before a singular masculine noun, if we want to say one desk, in Spanish, really, you're going to be saying a desk. And we know how we say a from our previous lessons, so it's going to be un. Remember, before a singular masculine noun, like this, pupitre, you cannot write the word uno. You have to use un. So let's go on and let's imagine that now we're going to count something else. We're going to count, let's say, the blackboard. Okay, so we can say hay, and we know we're going to be talking about pizarrón. Don't forget your accent mark. Punto. But we need to know, what are we going to put in the middle? Are we going to put una, uno, or un? We have to remember if pizarrón is masculine or feminine. Hopefully you remember it's masculine. We know we cannot write uno, right? Remember, we have to be able to take that O off. So we're going to write un. Hay un pizarrón. Okay, so we're going to do some practice here. I've already given you a picture, and I've given you 2 new vocabulary words that are in this picture. So for practice purposes, I'm going to let you know that ruler is la regla. Notice it's feminine. And apple is la manzana. Notice that is also feminine. So if I wanted to look at this picture and say there is an apple, or there is 1 apple, I would say hay una manzana. So what do you think it would be if I wanted to say there is a ruler? You're going to start with I, right? And then what would you have next? Would you have un or una? Well, if ruler is feminine, you should have una. And then you're going to say ruler, regla. Punto. Let's go ahead and count notebooks. Both of the examples that we've done so far were for singulars because there's just one apple and one ruler. But you can see from the picture that there's more than one notebook. So let's go ahead and count how many there are. I see 1, 2, 3, 4 notebooks. So I'm going to go ahead and say, what would I start with? What's my first word for saying there is or there are? Hay, right? And then I'm going to have the word for 4. Cuatro. And now I need the word for notebooks. Cuadernos. Oops, I misspelled that. Let's go back. And I need to make sure I've made it plural. Can't really see that green, so I'm going to change colors. Okay, let's take a look at pencils. I can see that I can't count all of them, but I can see that there's at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's just go with 6 for the purposes of practice. So again, I'm going to say I. And what would come next? How do you say 6? Seis. And then I'm going to have notebooks. Cuadernos. Oops, not cuadernos. That's not right. Hay 6 lápices. Okay, so next what you guys are going to do is you're going to go on, and I'm going to give you guys a picture, and I'm going to want you guys to make some sentences for that. Okay, so here's your picture. When you come in tomorrow, I want you to have at least 4 sentences using I. Okay, and for extra credit, those of you who want to, can look up the word for scissors and see if you can figure out how you would say there's one of the scissors. It's a little bit more complicated than you would think, but we'll go ahead and try it, and we'll do it for extra credit.